Hey everyone, and welcome back to a very special Entertainment Corner. I'm your host, Daniel Highland. It's May the 4th, otherwise known as Star Wars Day. Here I have with me three very special guests. We have Mr. White from Gen X representing the original trilogy, Mr. Amick representing the prequel trilogy, and David representing the sequel trilogy. All three from different generations, but all still Star Wars fans. So, what is your guys' favorite Star Wars films and why?
Clearly mine is The Empire Strikes Back. I just think it is a superior film to the rest of the Star Wars films. It's directed better. It just has a much better, intriguing story to it.
I'm going to go with The Empire Strikes Back as well. It took everything that I love. You know, when I was a kid and I had the VHS box set and I watched A New Hope for the first time, and I was like, okay, that was pretty good. But it took everything that I loved about A New Hope and it just cranked it up to 10. And it just, I mean, from the cinematography, everything about the film, it's a beauty. Even today, holds up better than, I think, 95% of films from this generation. In terms of, you know, the quality of the film and everything. So I 100% Empire Strikes Back.
I'd have to go with Revenge of the Sith. I'm personally a big prequels guy, even though I'm technically representing the sequels. Anakin Skywalker, his story has always been the main reason I really like Star Wars. You know, the fall of him from Anakin Skywalker to Darth Vader, and then him having to go against Obi-Wan Kenobi at the end. It's just a beautiful film.
100% agree. Do you think the original trilogy still has an influence today, in today's generation? So, or is it all prequels and sequels?
Well, I mean, obviously, if it wasn't for the original, nothing else would exist. So
Exactly.
Obviously, its influence is going to be far-reaching.
Exactly, and I think even when The Mandalorian came out and I watched it for the first time, there's that underlying vibe that the original trilogy has that the others have tried to capture, and some have done a pretty good job of. But when, The Mandalorian came out, I felt like I was back in that vibe. So it's like the spirit, the Force ghost of the original trilogy, is permeating all those other films. So like Mr. White said, if you didn't have that original trilogy, you wouldn't have a baseline for anything else that we love still today.
I couldn't have said any of that better myself. I really can't think of anything else to add to it. It's perfectly put.
What in your opinion is the best part of Star Wars? So like a special scene, or what's a favorite?
Well, I'm going to have to go The Empire Strikes Back, obviously. And the one part of Star Wars that I have watched, like, probably more than anything else of anything ever filmed is once they reach Bespin. So, like, the last third of The Empire Strikes Back, I've watched that more than anything else of Star Wars. Like, I've watched that, like, I'll go right to that on the Blu-ray and just watch that last third of the movie.
I think for me, the thing that sticks with me most about Star Wars, it's not even so much a particular scene, but I'll talk about one in a second, is just the aura of Star Wars. And for me, growing up, I was never into sports. I was never like the popular guy. Star Wars kind of gave me a place where I felt like I belonged. You know what I mean? It was something that appealed to my nerdy side and just really made me feel like I was part of something. But if we're talking about specific scenes, I'm actually going to go for the sequel trilogy. Because without any spoilers for those of you who have wasted so much time and not seen the film, years later, but if we're talking about The Force Awakens, and even though I knew the moment was coming, my favorite character meets a grisly demise, that I grew up loving from when I was a kid. And I can remember being in the theater and you could have heard a pin drop. There was no sound whatsoever. Everyone just sat in stunned silence when that death occurs. And it was, for a film, it was, we talk about emotional films and, romantic comedies and this and that, you gotta pull up the tissues and cry and all that stuff. This was heart-wrenching. Like, watching this scene, as a lifelong Star Wars fan, watching that scene, it just felt like somebody had sucked the life out of you. But it was so masterfully done in the grand scheme of things that it gives me chills talking about it.
Well, if we have to go, or if I'm going with just a specific part of Star Wars, the Clone Wars has always been what stood out to me. I grew up on the Clone Wars; it's really what got me into Star Wars, and just the fact that they were able to take a bunch of people played by the same voice actor that look identical and give them personalities, and make it so even when they're speaking off screen, you can tell, oh, that's Captain Rex, oh, that's Fives, that's Echo. It's just incredible how they were able to pull that off, not to mention the tie-ins to the prequel trilogy with Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker and the introduction of Ahsoka Tano, all characters that are iconic and will be iconic for years to come. But if you have to go with a specific scene, I'm going to go a different person, you guys. My favorite scene by far is the scene on Naboo where it's Anakin and Padme, and he walks up to her and he's flirting with her, and you get the whole "I don't like sand" line. I know it's not a cinematic masterpiece like you guys are talking about, but that scene has always resonated with me because I love that it conveys the awkwardness of Anakin Skywalker. You have a boy who was put into pretty much a cult, for lack of better words, that was taught not to have personal attachments, not to love, and he's turned around and trying to flirt with this woman that he is clearly in love with and has no idea how to speak on it. So he goes back to something from his childhood that he couldn't stand, and he compares this woman to that thing in a very awkward yet somehow touching way.
That's kind of beautiful, David.
Yes, it is. What character do you feel is the most interesting in the whole universe, and why, do you think?
Oh, I think that's a tough question.
Yeah.
I mean, because now I'm going to spoil it, but Han, as Mr. Amix already alluded to, Han is always like one of my favorite characters. I like Han a lot. When I was a kid, that was playing in the, went to Parkside and playing in the, during recess at Parkside, I always was Han with my group of friends. Obviously, as a teacher, I kind of always elevated to the teacher characters. So, Yoda and Obi-Wan when I grew up and then became a teacher, those characters became kind of like my go-to favorite characters.
Yeah. I think for me, if I'm going to pick the most interesting, and not necessarily my favorite, I think you've got to go, in my opinion, with Anakin. Because Anakin's story has so many ebbs and flows and highs and lows. You go from this kid who, he comes out of this bad situation, reaches incredible heights. You never think somebody, he defies all expectations. He completely abandons all principles and turns to the dark side. And then there's that miraculous resurrection and, just reclaiming of his former glory, at the end of Return of the Jedi. And it's so complicated and so wonderfully put together, like masterful storytelling.
Yeah, I have to agree with Mr. Amick. I definitely think it's Anakin. Not only just his story in general, but the fact that we get to see more of his story than anyone else with the Clone Wars. They always alluded to him being this great warrior, this great pilot, and then you actually get to go back and watch 7 seasons of him actually doing these having these accomplishments and accomplishing these amazing feats, just to have it all culminate in a horrible, tragic downfall.
Is there a better redemption story than Anakin?
Oh, no.
I don't think there is.
Definitely not.
I don't think there is.
Yeah.
He's a really good character. Which story on a character are you most excited to see or would want to see in the future of Star Wars?
Well, obviously we got the Obi-Wan series coming up.
Yes.
And just to see what's going to happen with that character in those years between, Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, and bringing Ewan McGregor back and everything. That's really exciting. I think that's kind of exciting and it covers the multi-generational approach to it, because I think we're going to touch everything. I think we're going to touch the Clone Wars, series in that. I think we're going to touch, obviously, building up to A New Hope. We're going to touch the prequel trilogy. So I would say that's probably the most exciting thing right now, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, Mr. White covered it. The obvious choice and the serious choice is the Obi-Wan series. That's a character, that I love, one of my all-time favorites, that I can't wait to see, that gap in time and how they fill that and what they do there. But on a less serious note, but also a serious note, if Lucasfilm, if you're listening, I want you to bring back Jar Jar. because I need
Yes.
you to redeem yourselves.
Yes. Or, yes.
J.J. Abrams missed a golden opportunity in the first frame of The Force Awakens of not just gruesomely killing Jar Jar Binks. And you would have had everyone in the theaters on their feet, throwing babies into the air. This is your chance. Make it up to me. I'm waiting.
Well, with Jar Jar, they should have never cut the scene where Anakin was supposed to kill him when he was going through the Jedi Temple.
Yeah.
That would have been fantastic. It would have just made Revenge of the Sith even better. But if we're talking about a character that I want to see more of, I would have to go with Finn. I really like how they set up Finn. I feel like he didn't get enough development. And I don't want to rag on Rey too much, but I feel like he would have been a better Jedi. I feel like just the story alone, a stormtrooper to a Jedi would have been fantastic.
Yeah.
That's a completely wasted opportunity. But them setting him up to be Force sensitive and setting him up to have all this potential development and then just throwing it out the window, it's probably the biggest waste Star Wars has ever had.
I have to agree with you guys with the Kenobi series. I am interested also to see how they're going to bring Darth Vader into this and see how they start with him in the first few years as being Vader. If I have to be completely honest, I'm more excited for the Ahsoka series to kind of see what that's going to bring. I hear a rumor we're going to see Ezra in it and Sabine and kind of get what happened with Ezra and Thrawn even, to see kind of what happened after they blasted away all of those years ago. So.
Well, I think that the Mandalorian series, what Disney has done, whether or not, what they did with the films is another question and a debate for another time. Mm-hmm. But the Mandalorian series proved how I think it really brings the generations together.
Yeah.
It's this, it's had the ability to really cross that divide for fandom. And the fact that I think that, we're building into so many more series. Today, obviously, new series drops today. The Bad Batch, which I'm sure, David, you're very excited about,
for it,
what's happening with that. Which, is interesting because, for my generation, it's like, I've enjoyed watching the Clone Wars, original trilogy guy, but, it's not like I understand your fandom with it and how much you love it. Like the Bad Batch is like, yeah, I'll watch it, but I'm not like super pumped like I know you are.
Yeah.
While we're on the topic, this might be more focused towards David, but what are you most excited about the Bad Batch?
I'm really excited that there's rumors that Rex is going to make an appearance, and I'm also really excited to see what direction they go with Commander Cody. If we have a scene where Rex and Cody meet, Rex obviously disobeying Order 66 and Cody following it, that would probably bring me to tears. Because those are two characters that I grew up with, that I loved, that I idolized, for lack of better words. And, I just can't imagine the two of them. They were brothers having to go against each other like that. Like, we saw how bad it was with Rex and Jesse. I can only imagine how much worse it would be with Rex and Cody.
So how did you guys all get into Star Wars? What started this whole generation?
I was 4. It was the summer I would have turned 5 in August of 77. And my mom took me to see it. I couldn't read yet, so the call came up. She leaned down in a full theater, read me what was happening. And then I just was like blown away. And I think that many of my generation had that experience because there was never something like this. And I was at the right age at the right time to have seen and ride this wave all the way through. And let me just quickly say that as a teacher, what's been really cool about being a Star Wars fan is how Mr. Amick was in my classroom. I taught him. You two are current students, and this is the thing that has connected us. This is the thing that really has bound us together, is this idea of Star Wars. And as an original generation Gen X Star Wars fan, when I was a Star Wars fan, it was my immediate friends and everything were Star Wars fans, but no one else was a Star Wars fan. It was we talked about Star Wars behind closed doors. You didn't dare say,
It's like Fight Club.
Yes, you didn't dare talk about Star Wars outside. And then as I started teaching, and then when the prequels came out, what I liked about the prequels more than anything else was the element that I could see that those students who I taught really enjoyed it. I mean, one of my biggest thrills was going to see Revenge of the Sith, the midnight showing, and walking into the theater and having about 50 or 60 of my students in the room all like turning and going, Mr. White's here, and it was like, what an impact. I mean, like, I'm a little Star Wars celebrity, and not even just because I'm a fan.
For me, like when I was really, really little, we're talking probably same age, 4 or 5. I was really into comics and really into sci-fi and superheroes, and the Batman animated series to this day is the holy grail of my childhood in terms of entertainment. But I remember they had just re-released a VHS box set of the original trilogy before Lucas really started getting his grubby paws all over it. And Mom had came home one day and she's like, I think you would like this. Like I think I had a Star Wars comic at one point or something. And I just remember sitting crisscross and just being mesmerized. And like I said earlier, watching A New Hope was one thing, but especially when I got to the Empire Strikes Back, and I just was glued. And then finally, just a few years later, when Phantom Menace came out, and I was like, okay, this one's mine. Like, I'm here for this. This one's mine. I remember going to the premiere I was with my uncle at the time, and this one belongs to me. I'm here for this. I'm here for this. And it was like a whole new generation starting out. I actually felt like I was a part of it. And it was just an incredible feeling. And ever since, just really connected me to it.
So when I was little, my dad and my mom were really into collecting VHS tapes. And I remember going through them. I was looking for like an Adam Sandler movie or something. And I came across, it was The Phantom Menace. And I just remember looking at Qui-Gon Jinn's face. And I was like, this looks fun. So I watched it and fell in love with it, as you guys did. And then I told my dad I really liked it. And my dad, he will never admit it because he thinks he's too cool for Star Wars. But he was like, okay, we're going to watch the rest of them. So we went through, we watched them. And then I kind of fell out of it. And then I was a real big Cartoon Network kid growing up. And I remember watching Clone Wars on Cartoon Network. I think the first episode I saw was the first Domino Squad episode. And that's a big reason why they're my favorites. But watching that, and then I fell out of it again when Disney bought it because I was like, oh, it's going to go downhill. Even as a little kid, I knew it was going to be bad. And then this past year when The Rise of Skywalker came out, a bunch of my friends were like, we're going to go see it. So I went through, watched all the movies again, watched a bunch of the Clone Wars again just to prepare to go see the movie with them in theaters. And I realized how much I had been missing out just sitting out from the Star Wars fandom for all these years when I could have been a part of it and enjoying it and just having fun.
Yeah, I remember we first heard The Force Awakens had released, and my dad had the old VHS tapes, like you guys have said. So we binge watched all of them, all of my family. I remember waking up one morning and my dad said he had something to show me. He got on our computer and he showed us the Force Awakens trailer. Of course, I was half asleep, but I saw the hyperspace and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't wait. We did get to go that weekend, but I will also always remember we actually got to see The Last Jedi the Thursday night it premiered. So it was also kind of like, all right, don't spoil this for anyone, but if anyone messed with me and they were a Star Wars fan, no, I wouldn't have done that.
Daniel, you actually made me think of something. We talked earlier about how, is Star Wars still relevant today? What hold does it have today? The fact that, when those movies were premiering, that I could threaten my students with spoilers, and it was like, no, for the love of all of this, no, don't spoil it. That is a powerful statement in itself. That is, it was one thing when, the Avengers movies were in theaters, and you could get a little rise, but for Star Wars, that was my threat those first couple weeks, because I was there opening night, first show. You could use that, as classroom management.
Well, and that brings up a point of like how you guys talk about the VHS tapes and things like that, and I remember, and Daniel, I remember like when I was in late high school, college, we would, a whole bunch of friends of us, and your mom wouldn't have been in the group of friends that we would get together and we would watch. We'd watch them all, like with all the original trilogy VHS tape back to back, Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi. And now of course we have so much great access, but that was like then it was like the holy grail of like because like owning the Star Wars movie back in the day, and talking like in the late 80s and early 90s, it didn't exist unless you bought like this very expensive version of a VHS copy of it. So yeah, I think it's a great thing because it's something that you can just share with so many different people.
What's also great is like every 2 weeks, there's always like a Star Wars marathon, whether it's like on TNT, where they'll show all of the prequel or original trilogy movies.
Yes, I don't know how many times someone does it, like if it's on TNT and then the next day in school, someone's like, Mr. White, did you see Star Wars was on?
Yeah, we'll,
Yes,
we'll watch that every week.
Every time it's on
Yes.
TV, I watch it.
Okay, as the final question for today, who is your guys' favorite character in the whole Star Wars universe, if you could pick? I mean,
I'll start. Mine was Han. As I said earlier, when I was younger, I was scrawny. I didn't play sports. I wasn't necessarily always the most popular kid, and Han was the guy I wanted to be. He had the cool ship. He dressed awesome. He got the girl. Like Han was everything I wanted to be, and so much more. And then, like Mr. White alluded to earlier, as I got older, I really did start to resonate with the master characters. Obi-Wan overall, more than any, would probably be, if I had to pick a second under Han, it would be Obi-Wan. But
Dave?
Okay, so starting out when I first watched Star Wars, like you guys said, Han Solo, he was the man, absolutely loved him. And then I got more into the prequel trilogy, and it was Anakin Skywalker, especially with playing like the Lego Star Wars games and things like that. Anakin was really the guy. But recently, as in my third stint, I guess you could say as a Star Wars fan, Rex has been just above everybody. Rewatching the Clone Wars, especially Season 7, it's just the fact that they were able to take such a basic concept and turn him into this like godly figure among people that, his brothers that are the exact same thing as him. And the emotion that D. Bradley Baker is able to pull off in his voice, and the fact that his voice is distinct from everybody, and the fact that he survived the Clone Wars and then went on and he pops up in Rebels, and then I don't know if it's confirmed or not, but pops up.
He was actually in the trailer for the Bad Batch.
Yeah, he pops up in the Bad Batch, but I was talking about Return of the Jedi, the character with the beard that everyone thinks is Rex. The fact that he was able to do all of that and just never changed is just phenomenal. Rex is easily my favorite character now.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you with Rex. I do really like Ahsoka. I think in the movies, my all-time favorite has been Chewbacca. I don't know what draws me toward that character, but he's always been a favorite of mine.
Yeah, and Han's mine. I've
no one
got
can beat Harrison Ford.
yeah. So
All right, well, thank you guys for joining me today.
happy May the 4th.
Happy May the 4th.
Happy May the 4th.
Fourth.